Hey folks, so you may or may not have heard recently that there was a item sold at auction for $4.4 million. It was an African mask, and the item was originally purchased from the original, or not quite the original owners, and I'll tell you about that in a little bit. But from the owners for $158 US. Now, that's the equivalent of $158. This all happened in France, so the original amounts would have been in francs. Now, the auction supposedly it sold for 4.4 million. I've also heard 4.6 million, but it was 4.2 million euros. But we'll talk in US dollars, so let's just say 4.6 million. Now, anyway, that's what it sold for in the end. The dealer or auction house, I'm still not clear on which. I hear reports of different, either the auction house or a dealer. But anyway, it was purchased for $158 from an elderly couple, and they had inherited it from a ancestor, a grandfather who had been a governor in this African country. Now, the way he acquired it, I'll discuss a little later. Now, in this particular case, it was bought for $158, like I said, in US funds. Now, the dealer at the time, by the sounds of it, thought it was worth about 600, or his research indicated it was worth 600, according to the two other parties that he consulted with. And later, it turned out, after he purchased it, that it was maybe worth $300,000. Now, what would you have done at that point? Now, in the end, it went to auction and sold for 4.6 million US. So, are the sellers owed some money? What would you do? Would you ante up some more money, or would you keep the full amount that you received after expenses and such as well? Because there are expenses involved. There's auction house commissions and fees and all sorts of numerous little charges, I'm sure. So what would you do? Now that's the first aspect of this. What would you do? Would you ante up some extra cash to the sellers, or split the proceeds? What would you do? Now, there is another issue behind all of this. This item is technically a cultural artifact, a historical artifact. It is said, and I haven't been able to confirm or deny this, but it is said it was stolen rather than a gift. So the governor obtained it in a illegal fashion. So it was in the hands of him as a stolen item. So it is said that this item is also culturally significant to the peoples of the country of origin. And this was a country in Africa. There was a activist at the auction that did make a fuss and had stated that this item should be returned because it was a stolen artifact. Now, in Canada here, we're having the same sorts of issues in finding artifacts that were stolen and not gifts. Now, gifts are a whole separate item. If they were given this item as a gift, that's a whole separate issue. It's yours. It's up to you what you do with it. But if it was stolen, then we're into a whole separate ballgame. Cultural artifacts, artifacts of significance like that, probably should be repatriated to the country they were stolen from. Just like World War II Nazi looting of museums and private collections and that sort of thing, they need to be given back to the families to the countries of origin. In this particular case, it's a historic cultural artifact, so it's even more so and more important to get it back. And like I said, this is a stolen item. This is not a gift. If it was a gift, separate issue entirely. It'd be up to you whether you want to give it back or not. It's yours, period. So that'd be just on you whether you want to give it back or not, or whether you want to sell it. It's in private hands. It is obtained legally as a gift. Different ballgame entirely. So we have two problems with this particular case. Some ethical issues regarding the money, and then we have some ethical, moral issues about the artifacts, our artifact being stolen in the first place back in colonial times. Was collected about 1917, I think it was. So it's not that far in the past, really, when it comes down to it. It's not like it was 300 years ago. We're talking fairly recent, so within the last 100 and some years, still within fairly recent history when you consider how old mankind is. Now, like I said, we're having the same issue in Canada here. There are things like totem poles and cultural indigenous artifacts that are in museums around the world that were stolen. They raided a village, they literally stole it, they literally hauled it across the ocean. Those artifacts should be given back. Simple as that. They should go back to the peoples that they were stolen from. If there were gifts, and there are items in museums, don't get me wrong, there are items in museums that were gifts given to individuals, given to museums by tribes, etc., or by the peoples that created them. So you have to sort out those two things when it comes to that sort of material. Not all items need to be given back, because like I said, some were gifts. Some were legitimate gifts given to officials, given to individuals, etc. So there is that issue there as well. So there are legitimate things in museums that should stay in those museums. They were gifts. But items that were stolen, that's a separate ballgame. That's some moral issues there. I know there will be people that say, well, they were obtained in a different time, etc., etc., etc. But they still should be given back. But going through that process and getting them back into the right hands, where they're going to be treated properly as well, or kept in conditions that are able to preserve them, there's that sort of situation as well, because in some situations they're not able to handle the material the way they should. Going from a climate controlled situation into an unclimate controlled situation where it's going to deteriorate and eventually be destroyed by the elements isn't a good thing either. Although, on the other hand, it's up to that group to handle them the way they feel they should be handled. But anyway, so we got two issues with that mask. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment below. Discuss among yourselves. And let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, guys. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and check out our other videos on antiquing, picking, thrifting, scrapping, etc. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care.